The stars looked different from here. Captain John Miller stood at the viewing deck of the USS Endeavour, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the unfamiliar constellations. Humanity's first faster-than-light vessel had traveled farther than any human in history. The year 2157 would go down in Earth's history books as the moment everything changed. "Captain, we're receiving the approach coordinates now," said Lieutenant Grace Bennett from her station. Her voice held a mix of excitement and tension that Miller felt in his own chest. "Very good, Lieutenant. Take us in, nice and slow. Let's make a good first impression." Miller straightened his uniform. After decades of searching the stars for signs of intelligent life, humanity had finally received an answer 3 years ago, an invitation to present themselves to something called the Galactic Council. The Endeavour glided toward an enormous structure that resembled a metallic flower blooming in space. Nexus Station, home of the Galactic Council, housed representatives from 17 advanced alien species. As they approached, smaller vessels escorted them, ships with strange geometries that seemed to bend light around their hulls. Ambassador Susan Clark joined Miller on the bridge. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her diplomatic uniform bore the United Earth insignia, a blue planet with olive branches encircling it. "Nervous, Ambassador?" Miller asked. "Terrified," she admitted with a small smile. "But ready. We've practiced for this moment since the message arrived." Miller nodded. "The delegation is prepared?" Dr. Olivia Ross is reviewing her scientific presentations one last time. "The cultural team is ready. We bring the best of humanity to this meeting, Captain." The docking procedure went smoothly. When the airlock doors opened, the human delegation faced their first aliens. Tall, slender beings with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with each movement. Their 4 eyes blinked in unison as they regarded the humans. "Welcome to Nexus Station," one said in perfect English. "I am Krell, attaché to the Council. Please follow me. The assembly awaits." The humans walked through corridors that seemed alive, with walls that pulsed with soft light. Other aliens passed by, some nodding in acknowledgement, others stopping to stare openly at the newcomers. Miller noticed at least 6 different species just on their short walk, some resembling insects, others like walking plants, and one that appeared to be made of living crystal. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council took Susan's breath away. It was a vast amphitheater with hundreds of seats arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. Above, the ceiling was transparent, showing the galaxy beyond. Representatives from all 17 council species were present, murmuring among themselves as the humans entered. At the highest tier sat 7 aliens of different species. The central figure, clearly the leader, had blue-gray skin and a head that extended backward in a sweeping crest. His 4 arms were adorned with what appeared to be ceremonial jewelry. "The human delegation may approach," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Susan stepped forward onto the central platform with Miller, Dr. Ross, and the others staying a respectful distance behind her. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," Susan began, her voice strong despite her nerves. "I am Ambassador Susan Clark of Earth. We come in peace and friendship, honored by your invitation and eager to learn from your wisdom." The blue-gray alien leaned forward. "I am High Counselor Vexthul of the Zoraxian Imperium, current chair of this council. Your species is younger than most we encounter." "We are a young civilization," Susan acknowledged, "but we have made great strides. In just the past century we have—" A sound interrupted her, a rhythmic clicking that took the humans a moment to recognize as laughter. It came from an insectoid being to Vex Thul's right. "Forgive Counselor Ziktik," Vex Thul said, not sounding apologetic at all. "The Trizid find humor in unusual places. Please continue with your achievements." Susan hesitated, then activated her presentation. Above the platform, a hologram appeared showing Earth's history, from the first cities to space exploration, and finally the development of the Hawking drive that brought them here. As she spoke of humanity's scientific and cultural achievements, Miller noticed more council members exchanging glances. Some made gestures that seemed dismissive. Others whispered behind clawed or tentacled appendages. When Susan mentioned Earth's hope for peaceful trade and knowledge exchange, a ripple of what could only be described as snickering passed through the chamber. "Ambassador," Vexthul interrupted, "while your enthusiasm is quaint, let us be clear about the reality of your position. Your species has only just learned to leave its own solar system. The youngest council race mastered faster than light travel 50,000 years ago. The oldest, my own, has been traveling the stars for over 1,000,000 years." He gestured toward her presentation, which showed humans celebrating the launch of the first FTL vessel. "What you consider your crowning achievement, we consider a child's first steps." "All species must begin somewhere, High Counselor," Susan replied evenly. "We come eager to learn." "Learn?" Another council member spoke up, a being that seemed composed of swirling vapors contained within a translucent membrane. "Your species still fights wars over resources that are abundant in space. You have nearly destroyed your planet's ecosystem. Several times. Your political systems are chaotic and inefficient. And yet," Susan countered, "we have overcome many challenges. We have united our world. We have cured diseases, extended our lifespans, and developed technologies that have improved the lives of all our people." Vexthul's upper eyes narrowed while his lower pair blinked slowly. "Tell me, Ambassador, how many extinction-level weapons does your species still possess?" Susan hesitated. "We maintain certain defenses as any sovereign nation would." This caused an eruption of those clicking, hooting, and whistling sounds that the humans now recognized as alien laughter. "A sovereign nation," Vexthul repeated, his voice thick with amusement. "Your species is barely evolved beyond hitting each other with sticks, yet you speak of sovereignty." Dr. Olivia Ross, standing behind Susan, kept her face neutral even as she tapped notes into her datapad. She recorded every reaction, every dismissive comment, noting which species seemed most contemptuous and which, if any, showed signs of sympathy. Susan maintained her composure. "High Counselor, despite your assessment, Earth formally requests consideration for observer status within the Galactic Council." Vexthul exchanged glances with the other senior counselors before responding. "Your request will be considered. In the meantime, you will be granted temporary quarters on Nexus Station. Perhaps observing truly advanced civilizations will be educational for you." As the human delegation was escorted from the chamber, Captain Miller moved closer to Susan. "That could have gone better," he murmured. "Actually," Dr. Ross said quietly, "it went exactly as I expected." When both turned to look at her, she added, "They're overconfident, complacent. They've shown us more about their weaknesses in this one meeting than they realize." Susan nodded slowly. "We have much to learn from the Council, though perhaps not the lessons they intend to teach." Miller looked back at the council chamber as the doors closed behind them. The aliens thought humans were primitive, maybe even harmless. He wondered how long that misconception would last. 6 months passed on Nexus Station. The human embassy occupied a small section in the outer ring, far from the grand chambers where important decisions were made. Ambassador Susan Clark stood at the window of her office, watching alien ships come and go. Each day brought new wonders and new insults. "Another message from Earth, Ambassador," said Colonel Alan Hayes as he entered the room. The military attaché looked tired. They all did. "What does the President say?" Susan asked, taking the datapad. "The same as last week. How much longer? Should we tolerate this treatment? When do we pack up and go home?" He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. 6 months of being treated like children at the adults' table. It's wearing thin. Susan nodded. "I know, but Dr. Ross says we need more time." As if summoned by her name, Dr. Olivia Ross walked in, followed by Dr. Frank Peterson, their cultural liaison. Olivia's eyes were bright with excitement, despite the dark circles beneath them. "They've called an emergency council session," she said. "All species required to attend." Frank frowned. "That's never happened before. Not in the 6 months we've been here." Whatever it is, they want us there too, Olivia added. The message specifically mentioned the human delegation. Susan straightened her uniform. Then we shouldn't keep them waiting. The council chamber was as impressive as the first time they'd seen it. Now Susan knew the names and histories of each species represented. The Zoraxians, the oldest and most powerful. The insect-like Trizid, masters of technology. The gaseous Vrel, the crystalline Kuloth, and a dozen others, all ancient by human standards, all looking down on Earth as barely evolved apes. High Counselor Vexthul raised all four arms for silence when the humans entered. His blue-gray skin seemed to shimmer under the chamber's lights. Representatives of Earth, he began. The Council has reached a decision regarding your status in galactic affairs. Susan stepped onto the speaking platform. We appreciate the Council's consideration, High Counselor. For 6 months we have observed your species, Vexthul continued. We have studied your history, your biology, your cultural development. We have compared you to the standard progression of intelligent life. Susan felt her heart beat faster. Perhaps they had finally seen past their prejudice. Perhaps humanity would be accepted as equals after all. The Council has determined that humanity represents a unique case, Vexthul said. Most species self-destruct at your current developmental stage. Those that survive do so by embracing logic and peaceful cooperation. Which we have done, Susan Har pointed out. Vexthul's four eyes blinked in that dismissive way she had come to recognize, only partially and too recently to be meaningful. Your history is dominated by violence. Your planet bears the scars of your carelessness. Your political systems remain fragmented despite your claims of unity. He gestured to a large display, showing Earth. You have simply found new things to argue about. New reasons to prepare for war. With respect, Susan countered, humanity has made remarkable progress. We have overcome many of our worst tendencies. Temporarily, said another, council member the insectoids Katik, our predictive models give your current planetary peace less than 30 years before major conflict resumes. The Vrel representative, a swirling mass of gas in a containment field, joined in. Without guidance, your species has an 87% chance of self-extinction within the next century. Susan felt cold. Guidance? Vexthul's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Today, this council enacts the Primitive Species Management Act. This legislation allows the council to assume supervisory control over developing species that present both potential and risk. Colonel Hayes stepped forward. Supervisory control? What exactly does that mean? It means, Vexthul said, that from this day forward, Earth's development will be carefully managed by council representatives. Your technological advancement, resource allocation, population growth, and military capacity will all be overseen by appointed administrators. Susan couldn't believe what she was hearing. That would violate our sovereignty, our basic right to self-determination. The chamber erupted with those alien sounds of amusement that Susan had come to hate. Sovereignty is earned, Vexthul said when the noise died down. Your species is simply too young, too volatile to be trusted with faster-than-light technology and the responsibilities it brings. For how long would this oversight last? Susan asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Until your species reaches an acceptable level of stability and wisdom, Vexthul replied. Our shortest estimate is 10,000 years. Colonel Hayes made a choking sound beside her. Dr. Ross had gone pale but was furiously taking notes on her pad. And if we refuse? Susan asked. Vexthul's upper eyes narrowed. This is not a request, Ambassador. A regulatory fleet has already been dispatched to your solar system. They will arrive in 30 Earth days. They carry sufficient force to ensure compliance or to neutralize the threat your species might otherwise pose to galactic stability. Susan felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath her. You're threatening our planet? Our people? We are saving you from yourselves, Vexthul corrected. The Council has overseen the development of 23 primitive species in its history. All have eventually taken their place among us as equals. Some required more forceful guidance than others. From the corner of her eye, Susan noticed two representatives, one from the feline Talaran species and another from the amphibious Nezdek, exchange what looked like concerned glances. "This session is concluded," Vexathul announced. "Human representatives, you will remain on Nexus Station while implementation protocols are finalized. Your vessel is not permitted to depart." As the council members filed out, Susan turned to her team. "We need to speak privately, now." Back in the embassy with security protocols engaged, Susan paced the room. "They can't do this. They can't just take over our planet." "They can if they have the firepower," Colonel Hayes said grimly. "And from what I've seen, they do." Dr. Peterson shook his head. "It's cultural arrogance on a scale I've never imagined. They genuinely see us as children needing guidance." "No," Dr. Ross said, looking up from her data. "This isn't about guidance. This is about control, about resources, about power." She placed her pad on the table, showing complex charts. "I've been analyzing their economy, their politics, their history. The Council isn't the benevolent institution they pretend to be. It's dominated by the oldest species who use it to maintain their advantage." "How do we fight this?" Susan asked. "How do we warn Earth?" Colonel Hayes leaned forward. "The Endeavor is locked down, but they haven't restricted access to our long-range communications yet. They probably don't think we can send messages faster than their ships can travel." "But we can," Dr. Ross said with a small smile. "I've been working with our engineers. We've found a way to boost our quantum entanglement transmitter. We can get a message home." Susan took a deep breath. "Then that's what we do. We warn Earth. We tell them everything." She looked around at her team. "The Council thinks they're dealing with primitives. Let's show them just how dangerous underestimating humanity can be." President Laura Wright stared at the screen in the White House Situation Room. The message from Nexus Station had arrived 3 hours ago. Since then, every military leader, scientist, and government official who could be quickly gathered was now present, either in person or via secure video. "Play it again," she said quietly. Ambassador Susan Clark's face appeared on the screen. Her expression was grim but determined. "Madam President, the Galactic Council has revealed their true intentions. They plan to place Earth under what they call regulatory control for at least 10,000 years. A fleet of their ships will arrive in our solar system in 27 days. They have the technology to enforce their will if we resist. We believe they intend to limit our technological development and control our resources. This is not a request for cooperation. It is an ultimatum." The message continued with Dr. Ross explaining the technical details she had gathered about Council, weapons, and defenses. Colonel Hayes provided an assessment of their military capabilities. Ambassador Clark concluded with a simple statement. "We will try to buy you time through diplomatic channels, but you must prepare Earth for what's coming. We trust you to make the right decisions for humanity's future." President Wright turned to General Richard Barnes, the head of Earth's combined military forces. "Options, General?" The tall, dark-skinned man stood. "Madam President, based on the information from Dr. Ross, we face a technologically superior force. But their advantage may not be as overwhelming as they believe." He touched a control, and a holographic display appeared above the table. "The Council races have been at peace for thousands of years. Their ships are designed for show as much as function. Dr. Ross's data suggests their weapons technology has barely advanced in the last millennium. Why improve what's never challenged?" "So we can fight?" asked the president. "We can fight," Barnes confirmed. "Whether we can win is another question, but I refuse to believe it's hopeless." Dr. George Winters, head of the Global Science Directorate, cleared his throat. "Madam President, there's something else." Dr. Ross sent technical data on their defensive systems. They use a standardized shield configuration across their fleet, efficient from a manufacturing perspective, but potentially vulnerable if we can find the right frequency to disrupt it. "How quickly can we develop countermeasures?" Wright asked. "Working. Around the clock? 2 weeks, maybe less," Winters replied. "But we'll need every scientist and engineer on the planet." "You'll have them." Wright promised. She looked around the room. As of this moment, Earth is in a state of emergency. Everything else is secondary to preparing our defenses. For the next 3 weeks, Earth transformed. Factories converted to military production. Civilian ships were retrofitted with hastily designed weapons. Military personnel trained day and night. Scientists worked without sleep, testing and refining countermeasures against the approaching threat. In his lab at MIT, Daniel Williams hadn't slept in days. The young engineer had been working on an adaptation of the Hawking drive when the emergency was announced. Now his project had taken on new urgency. Try it again, he told his assistant Beth Simmons. Increase the temporal displacement by another 3%. They watched as the small probe in their test chamber shimmered and seemed to fade partly from view. It's working, Beth whispered. The sensors can't get a lock. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. If we can't match their firepower, we'll have to outsmart them. A ship that can phase partly out of normal space-time would be invisible to their targeting systems. For how long? Beth asked. Only seconds at a time before the field collapses, Daniel admitted. But in battle, seconds could be enough. He reached for his comm unit. I need to speak to General Barnes. Now. On Nexus Station, Ambassador Clark maintained a careful facade of cooperation. Each day she requested meetings with council members, asking endless questions about the implementation process for Earth's management. Each question required consultation, documentation, and formal responses, all of which took time. You're being deliberately obstructive, Vex's Thule accused during one such meeting. Susan raised her eyebrows. Not at all, High Counselor. We simply want to ensure a smooth transition for our people. These questions are important to address before your fleet arrives. Meanwhile, Colonel Hayes made contact with representatives from the Talaran and Nezdek species, the two who had shown concern during the council announcement. Why help us? Hayes asked the Talaran representative, Mira, during a secret meeting in a rarely used maintenance corridor. The feline alien's ears flattened. Because we remember, before we joined the council, we were guided too. The Zoraxians stripped our world of resources, limited our development, kept us as second-class citizens for generations. The story they tell of equal membership is a lie. The amphibious Nezdek, Kroll, nodded his webbed head. Many of us have waited for an opportunity to challenge Zoraxian dominance. Your species may provide that chance. We need information, Hayes said. Anything you can tell us about that fleet. Ship configurations, command protocols, communication frequencies. We can do better than that, Mira said, her whiskers twitching. We can give you their tactical codes, their emergency override sequences. Back on Earth, the first ships equipped with Daniel Williams' phase-shifting technology were ready for testing. The USS Defiance, Earth's newest and largest warship, led the small fleet in maneuvers beyond the orbit of Mars. General Barnes watched from the bridge as the ships practiced appearing and disappearing from sensors. Not perfect, he muttered, but it's something they won't expect. His communications officer turned suddenly. Sir, message from the long-range outpost on Titan. Multiple FTL signatures detected at the edge of the solar system. The Council fleet has arrived, 5 days early. Barnes straightened his uniform and opened a channel to Earth. Madam President, they're here. Request permission to deploy the fleet according to Plan Omega. President Wright's voice came back, firm and clear. Permission granted, General. Defend Earth at all costs. She paused, then added, and General, make them regret underestimating us. As the crew prepared for battle, Barnes gazed at the distant blue dot that was Earth. For millennia, humans had looked to the stars with hope and wonder. Now those same stars had brought the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. Battle stations, he ordered. All ships, initiate phase protocols and prepare to move into position behind Luna. Let's show these aliens what happens when you back humans into a corner. The crew moved with purpose, faces set with determination. The Council thought they were dealing with primitives. They were about to learn just how dangerous those primitives could be. The Zeraxian dreadnought Eternal Dominion led the Council fleet into Earth's solar system. 500 ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the distant sun. Commander Zexnar stood on the bridge, 4 arms clasped behind, his back as he gazed at the blue planet on the main screen. Primitive, but not without a certain beauty, he remarked to his second-in-command. It will serve the Council well once properly managed. Sir, we're not detecting any orbital defenses, reported his sensor officer. Their satellites appear to be non-military. Their space stations are minimal. As expected, Zexnar said. Their ambassador assured the Council they would not resist. Still, maintain full shields. These humans are unpredictable. The fleet moved past the outer planets, past the asteroid belt, and approached Earth's orbit. Strangely, they encountered no resistance, no communication, not even a greeting. This is unusual, Zexnar muttered. Open a channel to their global leadership. On the view screen, a human woman appeared. President Laura Wright sat at a large desk, her expression calm but resolved. This is Commander Zexnar of the Galactic Council Regulatory Fleet. We have arrived to begin implementation of the Primitive Species Management Act. Your orbital space will now be under Council control. Please prepare your world leaders for our arrival. Wright's expression didn't change. Commander, this is President Laura Wright of the United Earth Government. We are aware of your intentions. Earth rejects the Council's management. We will maintain our sovereignty. Zexnar blinked all 4 eyes in surprise. Your rejection is noted but irrelevant. Compliance is not optional. We have 500 warships positioned around your world. You have no defenses capable of resisting us. I wouldn't be so sure about that, Wright replied. We've had time to prepare. Prepare? Zexnar laughed. What could you possibly— Sir, interrupted the sensor officer. Multiple energy signatures detected behind the moon. There. He stopped, confused. There and then they're not. I can't get a lock. What do you mean you can't get a lock? Zexnar demanded. How many ships? I don't know, sir. The signatures keep appearing and disappearing. Maybe 200. Zexnar turned back to the screen. A clever trick, President Wright. But whatever technology you're using to confuse, our sensors won't save you. You have 3 minutes to reconsider before we begin orbital bombardment of military targets. The screen went dark. Zexnar turned to his weapons officer. Target their largest military installations. Prepare to fire, on my command. Behind Earth's moon, General Barnes stood on the bridge of the EDF Defiance. 200 ships waited in formation, each equipped with Daniel Williams' phase-shifting technology. All ships report ready, sir, his communications officer said. Barnes took a deep breath. Commence Operation Spectre. Remember your training. Phase shift, attack, reposition, repeat. Don't stay visible for more than 5 seconds at a time. The fleet moved out from behind the moon, each ship partially phased out of normal space-time. To the Council's sensors, they would appear as ghosts, there one moment, gone the next. First, wave, engage, Barnes ordered. 50 human ships accelerated toward the Council fleet. As they approached, they shifted back into normal space just long enough to fire their weapons. Weapons specifically calibrated to the frequency Dr. Ross had identified in the Council's shield systems. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms blared. Shields. At 70%, shouted an officer. Multiple impacts across the forward section. Impossible, Zexnar growled. Return fire. But the human ships had already shifted again, becoming translucent ghosts that weapons couldn't track. They reappeared in new positions, fired again, and vanished. Second wave, engage, Barnes commanded. Another 50 ships joined the attack, creating chaos among the Council fleet. The alien vessels, arranged in their perfect formation, began to break ranks as they tried to track enemies they couldn't see. Captain Kelly Martinez commanded the EDF Intrepid in the third wave. Her ship was smaller than the Defiance, but faster. All hands, prepare for attack run, she ordered. Engineering, push the phase generator to maximum. The Intrepid shot forward, weaving between massive Council ships. Her weapons officer picked targets carefully, focusing on engines and weapons systems rather than trying to destroy the much larger vessels outright. Across the battlefield, human ships darted in and out of phase, striking and vanishing before the Council vessels could respond. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the Earth fleet was inflicting serious damage. On the Eternal Dominion, Commander Zexnar watched in growing horror as his perfect formation fell apart. 15 Council ships had already been disabled. Their shields collapsed under the precisely targeted human attacks. How? He demanded. How are they doing this? They're primitives. His tactical officer had no answer. The humans were using technology the Council had never seen before. Never, even conceived of. The aliens had expected a simple show of force followed by Earth's surrender. Instead, they found themselves in a real battle against an enemy they couldn't track. Sir? His weapons officer called out. Shields at 40% and failing. We need to withdraw and regroup. Withdraw before primitives? Zexnar snarled. Never. Prepare the planet-killer missiles. If we can't have this world, no one will. Miles away, the EDF Intrepid detected the missile bay doors opening on the Eternal Dominion. Captain, called out Lieutenant Sam Hill from Tactical. The Dreadnought is arming what appear to be high-yield weapons. Based on their energy signature, they could devastate the planet. Captain Martinez felt ice in her veins. The Intrepid's sensors, enhanced with data from the Talaran and Nezdek allies, showed exactly what the Zeraxian ship was preparing to do. There was no time to warn General Barnes, no time to coordinate a response. Helm, set course directly for the Dreadnought's missile bay, she ordered, her voice steady. Ma'am? The helmsman turned in shock. You heard me, Lieutenant. Full speed. Engineering, divert all power to forward shields and the phase generator. We need to stay solid long enough to make impact. Understanding dawned on the bridge crew's faces. No one protested. No one hesitated. It has been an honor serving with you all, Martinez said as the Intrepid accelerated toward the massive dreadnought. On the Eternal Dominion, Zexnar noticed the small human vessel too late. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted. But the Intrepid was too fast, too determined. It phased into solid form at the last second and slammed into the open missile bay of the dreadnought. The explosion tore through the Zeraxian ship's weakened shields and into its core. General Barnes watched from the Defiance as the Eternal Dominion erupted in a blinding flash. The Intrepid? He asked quietly. His tactical officer shook his head. No survivors, sir. Barnes closed his eyes briefly. Note in the log, Captain Kelly Martinez and the crew of the Intrepid gave their lives to save Earth. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. He turned to his communications officer. Signal all ships, press the attack, show no mercy. With their flagship destroyed and their commander gone, the Council fleet fell into disarray. The human ships, still phasing in and out of normal space, continued their relentless assault. For every Earth vessel lost, 5 Council ships were disabled or destroyed. 6 hours after the battle began, the Council fleet raised white energy signatures, the universal sign of surrender. 3 weeks after the Battle of Earth, Ambassador Susan Clark stood in her quarters on Nexus Station. She smoothed down her formal diplomatic uniform and took a deep breath. Today would change the course of galactic history. Ready, Ambassador? Colonel Hayes asked from the doorway. He wore his dress uniform, medals gleaming on his chest. As ready as I'll ever be, she replied. Any word from our friends? Hayes nodded. Mira and Kroll confirm that 12 species will support our proposal. The Zeraxians are still in disarray after losing most of their fleet. The other Council races are waiting to see which way the wind blows. Dr. Ross joined them, her datapad tucked under her arm. I've finished the presentation. The data is irrefutable. Then let's not keep the Council waiting, Susan said. The 3 humans walked through the corridors of Nexus Station with straight backs and steady steps. This time, aliens moved out of their way. Some nodded in respect. Others watched with wary eyes. News of Earth's victory had spread throughout the station. Outside the Council chamber, they were met by Captain John Miller, who had arrived the previous day aboard the EDF Defiance, now the flagship of Earth's fleet. Behind him stood General Barnes and President Wright. who had made the journey to personally address the council. "Madam President," Susan greeted her with a small bow. "It's good to see you in person after all this time." Ambassador Clark, "Right," replied warmly. "Your work here laid the foundation for our victory. Today we finish what you started." The great doors of the council chamber opened. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Many seats remained empty, representatives of species whose ships had been destroyed or captured in the battle. The Zoraxian section was particularly sparse. High Counselor Vex Thule was notably absent, replaced by a younger Zoraxian who looked distinctly uncomfortable. The human delegation entered, followed by representatives from the Talaran and Nezdek species. The chamber grew quiet as President-y Wright took the central platform. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she began, "I am Laura Wright, President of United Earth. I come before you not as a supplicant, not as a primitive seeking your approval, but as the representative of a sovereign species that has earned its place among the stars." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The acting Zoraxian chair stood. "Earth has committed an act of war against the Council by destroying our regulatory fleet. You will answer for this crime." President Wright remained calm. "What crime? Defending our home against unprovoked aggression? Protecting our sovereignty against those who would strip it away?" "I think not." She gestured, and Dr. Ross stepped forward, activating a holographic display. "Dr. Olivia Ross will present our findings on Council operations over the past 1,000 years." Ross cleared her throat. "Our analysis of Council records, generously provided by several member species, reveals a disturbing pattern. The so-called Primitive Species Management Act has been used 23 times in Council history. In every case, the managed species had valuable resources or strategic positions. In every case, those resources were extracted by the dominant Council races while development of the primitive species was deliberately slowed. Images appeared showing planets before and after Council management. Worlds stripped of forests, oceans turned murky with industrial waste, native populations living in poverty while Council races profited. This was never about guiding younger species, Ross continued. It was about exploitation disguised as benevolence. The new Zoraxian chair sputtered in protest, but was drowned out by voices from other Council members demanding to see the full data. President Wright raised a hand for silence. "We did not come here today merely to expose past wrongs. We came to offer a new path forward." Ambassador Clark stepped up beside her. "For too long, this council has been dominated by its oldest members. Species like the Zoraxians have used their power to maintain control, to gather wealth, to keep others subservient. But age does not equal wisdom. Longevity does not guarantee justice." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of various representatives. "Earth proposes the dissolution of the current council structure and the formation of a new galactic alliance, one where all member species have equal voice, where no race can impose its will on another, where cooperation replaces control." The chamber erupted in a mixture of support and outrage. The Talaran representative, Mira, raised her voice above the din. "The Talaran Confederation supports Earth's proposal. For too long, we have been second-class citizens in our own galaxy." Kroll of the Nezdek added his support, followed quickly by representatives of 10 other species who had suffered under Zoraxian dominance. The acting Zoraxian chair looked around in growing alarm as allies abandoned him one by one. "This is outrageous," he protested. "You cannot simply dismantle thousands of years of galactic order." "We already have," General Barnes said, stepping forward. "Your fleet is destroyed or captured. Your military might, the only thing that kept this corrupt system in place, is gone." President Wright raised her hands. "We do not seek to replace one form of domination with another. Earth has no desire to rule the galaxy. We wish only to ensure that no species ever again faces the ultimatum we received: submit or be destroyed." She activated another holographic display, showing the proposed structure of the new galactic alliance. "All species who wish to join will have equal representation. Decisions affecting member worlds will require consensus. Military power will be balanced, with no single race controlling the majority of forces. The Zoraxian chair slumped in his seat, defeated. Around the chamber, representatives began to signal their support for the proposal. The age of Zoraxian dominance was over. 1 year later, Ambassador Susan Clark stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, a new diplomatic hub built in Earth orbit. Below her, the blue planet spun peacefully. Above, ships from 24 worlds moved through space, their designs as varied as the species that built them. President Wright joined her at the window. "Quite a view," she remarked. "Quite a year," Susan replied. 12 founding members in the alliance now, with 5 more preparing to join. Trade routes established, cultural exchanges underway, scientific cooperation advancing technologies across all member worlds. Wright smiled. "And to think, just over a year ago they called us primitives." "They don't make that mistake anymore," Susan said. She pointed to a gleaming memorial that orbited nearby, a fragment of the EDF Intrepid's hull, preserved in a crystal sphere, thanks to people like Captain Martinez and her crew. "Does it bother you?" Wright asked after a moment, "that it took a demonstration of military power to change things?" Susan considered this. "What bothers me is that it was necessary. But what gives me hope is what we did afterward. We could have become the new Zoraxians, imposing our will on a defeated enemy. Instead, we offered partnership." She looked out at the stars. "They mocked us for our youth, our emotion, our unpredictability. They saw only our capacity for violence. They failed to see our capacity for compassion, for innovation, for growth." Wright nodded. "That was their mistake. The greatest one they ever made," Susan agreed. "They mocked humanity and paid the ultimate price, not just in ships and lives lost, but in the collapse of their entire way of life." A group of Teliran and Nezdek diplomats approached, accompanied by representatives from Earth and 3 other worlds. They were laughing together, sharing stories, building the foundations of understanding between species. But perhaps, Susan added quietly, it was also the greatest gift they could have given the galaxy.